They never forgot. They calculated, they planned. And they made sure that Black Americans would never get reparations. Not because it was too expensive, not because it was too complicated, but because paying the debt would expose a truth America has never wanted to admit, that the nation was built on theft. And it still profits from that theft today. So ask yourself, why have reparations been paid to nearly every other wronged group, but not to the descendants of enslaved Africans? In America? Asterisk from the very beginning. The American government made clear who would be compensated for slavery, and it wasn't the enslaved. In 1862, President Abraham Lincoln signed a law offering up to $300, not to the freedmen, but to slave owners. In Washington, D.C., their loss of property was seen as worthy of compensation. The human beings who'd endured generations of forced labor? Nothing. Why? Because from a legal standpoint, Black people weren't considered victims. They were considered assets that no longer had economic use. You ever wonder why 40 acres and a mule was never delivered? General Sherman's field order? No, 15. Promised land to formerly enslaved families. But within months, President Andrew Johnson overturned it, returning the land to Confederate slaveholders. Asterisk. The message was clear. White rebellion would be forgiven. Black freedom would not be funded. Asterisk by 1860. The combined value of enslaved Black people was estimated at $3 billion, more than all U.S. banks, railroads, and factories combined. Let that sink in. Black bodies were Wall Street's original collateral. Plantation wealth didn't just disappear. It was reinvested, inherited, and protected. But when slavery ended, no restitution was made, and whenever Black Americans tried to build wealth on their own, the response was always the same: destruction. Tulsa, Oklahoma, 1921. Black Wall Street burned to the ground by white mobs. Rosewood, Florida, 1923. Another thriving Black town erased. Wilmington, North Carolina, 1898. Elected Black leaders overthrown in a violent coup. Insurance claims? Denied. Government protection? Non-existent. Asterisk reparations? Not even a conversation. So ask yourself, is it really about fairness? Or is it about fear? Fear that if Black Americans were ever compensated, they'd have power that couldn't be ignored. Asterisk America does believe in reparations, just not for Black people. In 1988, Congress formally apologized and paid $20,000 to each Japanese American interned during World War II. Germany has paid billions in reparations to Holocaust survivors. Many of them living in the U.S., even Native American tribes, while still vastly undercompensated, have received formal apologies and settlements for stolen land. So why not African Americans? According to a 2016 United Nations working group, the U.S. owes descendants of slaves reparations for racial terrorism and the legacy of slavery, yet the U.S. government dismissed the report outright. In 2014, writer Ta-Nehisi Coates made the case clear in his groundbreaking essay for The Atlantic. He didn't just talk about slavery, showed how redlining, exclusion from the GI Bill, predatory lending, and mass incarceration were all part of the same uninterrupted system. Asterisk still. Congress hasn't passed H.R. 40, a bill that would simply study reparations, not implement them. Why are they so afraid to even study the debt? Asterisk, any time reparations gain traction, there's a sudden panic. Conservatives call it race baiting. Liberals say it's politically impractical. Media outlets run headlines like, "How would we even pay for it?" But nobody asked that question when we bailed out banks in 2008, or sent billions to overseas allies, or forgave student loans. For elite universities, the truth? Reparations aren't about money. They're about power, accountability, and memory. In the 1960s, when Martin Luther King Jr. began calling for economic reparations, not just civil rights, his public support plummeted. He was no longer seen as a unifying figure, but a radical threat. King's Poor People's Campaign meant to demand wealth redistribution and economic justice was cut short by an assassin's bullet, asterisk, and once again, the conversation died. Asterisk, today we hear a lot of coded pushback. It happened too long ago. No one alive today was a slaveholder. Why should I pay for what my ancestors did? But that logic doesn't apply anywhere else. Corporations like Aetna, Wells Fargo, and J.P. Morgan Chase, all of which profited from slavery, still exist. They still hold the wealth that was built on stolen black labor and modern policies. They continue the harm. The war on drugs decimated black families. Mass incarceration stole generations of income. Redlining locked black families out of homeownership, the key to generational wealth, according to a 2021 study by Brookings. The average white family has 10 times the wealth of the average black family. This isn't about the past. It's about a system still running on the same engine. So let's go back to the question. Why have reparations never been paid? Because if America paid this debt, it would mean admitting that the economy was built on unpaid black labor, acknowledging that racism wasn't a glitch, it was the business model, setting a precedent for other oppressed groups to demand compensation, and finally, handing black Americans the capital, not just the rights to build true independence. It would mean a redistribution of wealth, power, and narrative. And to the people who run this system, that's more terrifying than the truth itself. They never wanted us to get reparations because they knew that if they paid what was owed, they would no longer control the story. They would no longer decide who gets to rise, who gets to heal, who gets to remember. But history does not forget. And the longer the debt goes unpaid, the louder the demand becomes. So the question now is not, can America afford reparations? It's whether America can afford to keep pretending it doesn't owe them. Because truth delayed is not truth denied. It's just truth waiting to be reckoned with. If this made you think, don't just scroll past. Comment your thoughts. Share this with someone who still doesn't get it. And remember, history isn't over. We're living it.